Welcome back. Now, shame can be defined as a feeling of embarrassment or humiliation that arises in relation to the perception of having done something dishonorable, immoral, or improper. While shame is a negative emotion, its origins play a part in our survival as a species. Joining us in studio this morning to talk to us about shame amongst children is Intern clinical psychologist Elsabe Grotzinger. Good morning, Elsabe, and welcome to Good Morning Namibia.
Good morning. It's great to be here again.
I have sung the song over the past couple of weeks so often, but we are told reliably that one is allowed to say Happy New Year until March every year. So may it be a healthy and fulfilling year for you and yours.
Thank you very much.
Help us understand how shame manifests in children.
Shame starts actually at a quite early age in children, and it can be even up to 2 to 3 years. That is how early it starts, and it is when one has an inward negative self-evaluation, and that comes from self and from others. So the self-evaluation roots when you are constantly being disvalued or devalued by others during your childhood. And then that can lead to bigger problems.
That is quite scary to you. You say that it could start at 2 already. Could it mean that something may have happened during the pregnancy already, before the child was born? Or once the child was born, this belittling may have started, this humiliation?
Yes, definitely. A lot of it it can happen already from in the womb, but not shame necessarily. But I can say mental health can already start there, because anxiety, substance use, tense and so on, already the child becomes aware of that. So as the child get delivered and is birthed, then it can continue if the child is exposed to harsh relationships or parenthood.
And those could, of course, be the child's biological parents, but it also could be other caregivers, siblings in the society.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The parents definitely, because the mother is being considered as the primary caregiver. Often there are also others, like the domestic worker, who's also a caregiver. We depend quite a lot on grandparents and bigger sisters and brothers, so that definitely the caretaker plays a crucial role in the development of a child.
Now, let's unpack that harsh treatment a bit further. What are these factors that contribute to a child experiencing shame?
Criticism from others. So it's parents, teachers, friends. So it's that continuously you are not good enough. We have the tendency, even as a society, in many cultures, we have the tendency to give negative feedback first, when the where and when and what the child should have done better. And we forget to reinforce the little milestones that have been achieved. The constant teasing, bullying, embarrassment, the anxiety, the fear of doing something wrong or that something may go wrong.
What role does the mode of disciplining the child play, or what role could it play?
Disciplining the child, so you get almost positive discipline and you get the negative discipline. So the positive discipline is about reinforcing the child and carrying the child, holding the child, guiding the child in a positive manner and correcting the child in a positive manner. And then it's the negative one where we hit the child, or we scold the child, or just belittle the child. And this is, as I was saying, the teasing and the embarrassment, or continuously giving this child the impression that I'm not good enough.
Did I understand you correctly that corporal punishment is not regarded as a constructive way of disciplining a child?
No, definitely not. That's why it's illegal in Namibia. Then you need to find other positive ways to still discipline the child. It doesn't mean that the child doesn't have to be disciplined. Discipline is important, but not physical or emotional abuse, for instance. Because physical punishment is abuse, and you can go to jail for that. Yes.
We often hear, more so in 2022, that the conduct of adults we engage with is the result of childhood trauma. We are reenacting our deepest childhood traumas and our childhood wounds. So please help us understand what the connection is between shame, humiliation, embarrassment as a child and mental health later.
Yes, we actually refer to that as the inner child. So it means that a lot has happened to us as children. So that can lead to when the child grows up, that the child struggles with a lot of day-to-day issues, and when it becomes a mental health issue. So it can be transformed in ways like in PTSD. Shame and PTSD has a link. Shame and panic attacks has a link. Shame and anxiety has a link. So at the end, that can influence the relationships with other people. And obviously then that goes into marriages and into your children then are being impacted in the way that you raise your kids.
So the shame
it has a broad outreach, broad impact.
So the shame I experienced as a child could impact the manner in which I eventually raise my children.
Yes.
And reinforce that.
Yes. If I don't learn, and if I'm not open, and if I don't have insight.
And self-awareness.
And self-awareness, internal locus of our control. Otherwise, if it's all continuous external locus of control, and it's always the other person, for instance, this is an example, then that's how you raise the child. Role model, this is what I see at the end. This is what I experience at the end. So at the end, this is it's possible that is the type of adult that I can become.
Now, notwithstanding my childhood trauma, my childhood wounds, perhaps because of my childhood trauma and because of my childhood wounds, how can I develop self-awareness that I keep on lovingly parenting that inner child so that I don't bleed onto others?
Very good question. Yes, it is important that we look at ourselves. So as I've already mentioned, to have self-awareness, to be self-conscious, to be the self plays a very important role. Self-confidence at the end. So if I'm not open to feedback, but unfortunately, like I mentioned, we receive such negative feedback, so we shut down and react. So if I don't work on myself and I educate myself and I read about things, get access to therapy, for instance, then you become so, that's where narcissistic personality disorder is can also be linked, because that is a possibility that kids that are constantly being shamed can also develop. So to be aware, to seek help, to notice self-listening, the language that we use. You must do this. Instead of, could you please assist me to do this? That, just by the language, the body language, that can make a huge impact on the people around us. If I'm miserable and I continue to be miserable, I make others around me miserable. So be aware of us, be aware of what is going on around us, and know when I need to step back. I don't always have to engage. I don't always have to engage.
And sometimes we perhaps need to disengage.
We need to disengage, and that is what we don't know well to do. If we don't disengage, you engage in unhealthy manners. So you make yourself unhappy, miserable, because it's the next person who upset you, obviously, because you don't take any responsibility. And then you also make the others unhappy. Now, we are all miserable at the end.
It's a big pity party. Yeah.
Yes, you couldn't have said it better.
Yeah, Elsabe, it's always such a great delight to learn from you and to have you. In conclusion, for those adults tuned in this morning, whether as a parent, a caregiver, a nanny, a teacher, who are realizing, shoo, I may have approached this incorrectly, how can they help deal with shame in children?
First, have empathy. If a child made a mistake, try to understand where this child is coming from, what happened, what led to it. Empathy is an antidote for shame. So lack of approval, for instance, because we continuously criticize. Praise children for the effort and gently guide them and assist them to make improvements. Model the behavior that you want. Don't say do as I say, and no, it's do as I do. We as adults need to start to be examples, role models, so the children can learn from us. And just to the tips to adults also is to practice mindfulness. And we have somebody here who will talk about mindfulness today. Recognize when you are feeling shame. Seek support. See a professional. It's actually awesome to see professionals and to talk in an environment where you are not being judged. Thank you.
Thank you for your time and thank you for sharing your expertise.
You are very welcome.
Have a marvelous Monday.
Thank you.
That was Intern clinical psychologist Elsabe Grotzinger talking to us about shame, especially amongst children. And she reminded us that indeed empathy is an antidote to shame. We're right back after a brief break.